The afternoon looked like a scene from a calm postcard, sunlight drifting through tall trees and spreading warm patches across the walking paths of one of the city's wealthiest parks, where families relaxed on benches, joggers passed by, and children's laughter echoed softly in the distance, creating a peaceful atmosphere that made everything feel safe and ordinary. On a wrought iron bench near a small pond sat a graceful black woman in her early 40s, dressed in a fitted cream dress and a light trench coat that moved gently with the breeze. Her style quiet yet refined, the kind that showed confidence without needing attention. She checked her watch, lifted her coffee, and smiled faintly as she waited for her husband, enjoying a rare moment of calm in the middle of a busy life. Not far away, a patrol car rolled slowly over the gravel path, its tires crunching softly. Inside were two officers, a bitter veteran with years of frustration etched into his face, and a young rookie sitting stiffly beside him, eager but unsure. The veteran narrowed his eyes and pointed toward the woman on the bench, muttering that she looked out of place, questioning what she was doing there, while the rookie hesitated, saying she was just sitting and waiting. That didn't matter to him, because boredom mixed with prejudice was enough to create suspicion where none existed. He pulled the car over, convinced there was something wrong simply because she didn't fit his idea of who belonged in that neighborhood. Their boots hit the pavement as they approached, and the woman barely noticed until a shadow crossed her phone screen and a harsh voice demanded to know what she was doing. Calmly, she said she was waiting for her husband, but the officer pressed further, asking where she lived, the words heavy with judgment. She replied that she was in a public park and hadn't broken any laws, and that was when his tone sharpened. He claimed she matched a suspicious description, though none existed, and ordered her to stand and show identification. With steady confidence, she refused, explaining she knew her rights, and the refusal struck his ego like an insult. Without warning, he grabbed her arm, sending her coffee flying across her coat as hot liquid splashed down the fabric, and he shouted that she was resisting, even though she wasn't. People nearby turned in surprise. Conversation stopped, and curious eyes locked onto the scene as he twisted her arm painfully behind her back and shoved her toward the bench. She cried out that he was hurting her, but he only tightened his grip, and in the struggle his heavy boot caught the edge of her dress, ripping the delicate fabric loudly up her thigh. The sudden tearing sound sliced through the quiet park, and phones immediately appeared in the hands of bystanders, recording everything. Her dress hung torn, her coat stained with coffee, and humiliation burned across her face as she stood restrained in front of strangers, while the officer smugly snapped cold metal cuffs around her wrists and claimed she shouldn't have fought back. The rookie stood frozen, pale and silent, while the crowd grew tense yet afraid to step in. The officer barked at people to stay back, his hand hovering near his weapon, acting as though he was still fully in control. But no sirens came, and for a moment it seemed she would be taken away without anyone stopping it. Then the deep rumble of an engine rolled across the park, louder and stronger than ordinary traffic, and a large black SUV pulled up sharply beside them with hidden lights flashing. Its doors burst open and several men in dark suits moved quickly and confidently toward the officers, commanding them to step away from the woman immediately. The veteran tried to argue that it was a lawful arrest, but his voice wavered as the final door opened slowly and a tall man stepped out, calm yet powerful in his presence. The woman's eyes met his, and relief rushed over her face because it was her husband, the governor of the state. The officer's face drained of color as recognition hit him, and a shocked murmur swept through the crowd. In one instant, the moment the governor's voice cut through the park, the air seemed to change. What had seconds earlier felt like a one-sided show of authority now felt like a courtroom where judgment was already being written. The veteran officer stood stiff, his mouth opening but producing no sound, While the men in dark suits closed in, their posture calm but unmistakably firm. The woman's wrists were freed almost immediately, the cold metal dropping away as a security detail stepped between her and the officers, creating a wall of protection that hadn't existed minutes earlier. Her husband draped his jacket around her shoulders to cover the torn fabric and gently steadied her shaking frame. His jaw clenched as he took in the red marks on her skin and the pain in her eyes. He asked again, quieter this time but far more dangerous, what possible reason there had been to put his wife in handcuffs. The veteran stumbled through excuses about suspicious behavior and refusal to identify herself, but each word sounded weaker than the last as dozens of phones continued recording. The woman lifted her chin despite the ache in her arm and calmly asked what crime she had committed, forcing the silence to grow heavier. There was no answer, only the sound of distant traffic and whispered gasps from the crowd. Within minutes, more patrol cars rushed in, tires screeching as supervisors jumped out, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror as they realized who stood before them and what had happened. The veteran officer was ordered to hand over his weapon and badge on the spot while the rookie followed trembling, tears streaking down her face. The scene that had started as humiliation had become a public removal of power, and every camera captured it. But the fallout didn't stop in the park. The videos exploded across social media before sunset, spreading faster than any official statement could control. The police union rushed out a defensive narrative, claiming the officer feared for his life and that the woman had been uncooperative, trying to paint the incident as a misunderstanding rather than an assault. For a few hours, the internet split into arguments, some defending the badge, others demanding justice. That night, bruised and wrapped in medical bandages, the woman stood beside her husband in front of a wall of microphones and cameras. Her voice was steady despite the pain as she described exactly what had happened, refusing to soften a single detail. Then a new video played on the screen behind her, one recorded before the officers even approached, capturing the veteran laughing, making comments about her not belonging in the neighborhood, and admitting he was bored and looking for trouble. The room erupted in shock as the truth finally stood undeniable. Charges were announced immediately for assault, false arrest, and abuse of authority. Investigators revealed that the officer had a history of complaints that had quietly disappeared over the years, buried by internal protection. The union leaders who had helped shape the false story were pulled into the investigation as well, their emails and report edits exposed. What had begun as a single incident was now unraveling an entire system of cover-ups. Over the following weeks, past victims stepped forward one by one, telling stories that mirrored what had happened in the park. Sudden accusations, fabricated threats, unnecessary force, and lives damaged by false charges. Old cases were reopened, sentences reviewed, and wrongful convictions overturned. The veteran officer, once so confident behind his badge, now sat in court facing multiple counts, his career already destroyed before the verdict was even read. When the jury finally found him guilty on every charge, the courtroom felt lighter, as if a long-held breath had been released. His prison sentence ended the power he once abused, but the impact reached far beyond him. New laws were passed strengthening body camera rules, independent oversight boards were created, and automatic reviews were triggered whenever force was used. The woman turned her trauma into action, launching a legal fund to help those who couldn't afford to fight misconduct alone. People who had once been afraid to speak now had support and representation. Justice, once rare, became possible. Months later, she returned to the same park with her husband. The bench where everything had happened had been replaced with a small memorial dedicated to civil rights and accountability. Children played nearby, joggers passed, and life continued. But the space now carried a deeper meaning. As a patrol car rolled by, The officers inside nodded respectfully instead of staring with suspicion. The pain of that day would never fully disappear, but it had transformed into something powerful. What was meant to be a moment of humiliation had become the spark for real change, proving that abuse thrives in silence but collapses in the light, and that sometimes the greatest reckoning begins when the wrong person is mistreated on the wrong day and refuses to stay quiet. Held vanished. The governor's quiet voice cut through the tension as he asked why his wife was in handcuffs, and the officer stood frozen, hands trembling, realizing too late that arrogance had led him to the wrong woman on the worst possible day.